Good evening and welcome to the regular session of council. It is Thursday, July 20th, 2023, 7 p.m. and I will now call this meeting to order. I'll remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none noted. Section 3, review of items not listed on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, we have two items tonight. So the first is a report CAO 4123 regarding an agreement with Rogers for a communication tower. And then CAO 4223, which is an agreement with RSM for building support services.
Okay, thank you. Moving on with section 4, announcements this evening. Pretty quiet week. Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that the BAM Historical Society is having their mystery cruise this weekend. Please plan to attend
It'll be a mystery dinner that comes with it.
with a mystery cook.
Thomas?
Just a quick reminder, Mr. Mayor, that in observation of the civic long weekend that's upcoming, the municipal office will be closed on Monday, August the 7th.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, skipping down to section 6, delegations. I believe we have first up is Jacob Hanlon regarding food cycle science. And I believe he's joining us virtually. Good evening, Jacob.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council and staff. Just want to confirm you can hear me okay? Perfect. If I could just request that I could share my screen, that would be fantastic.
Should be able to give it a try.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, now that I have that up, why don't I get started? So just want to start by saying thank you very much for having me on tonight. My name is Jacob Hanlon, and I'm the Municipal Program Coordinator at Food Cycle Science, and I'm excited to be here virtually to discuss a food waste diversion solution. And I'm going to go over a decent amount of information here just in the next 10 minutes, so I kindly ask that you stick with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So why don't I get started here? Just to briefly speak about who we are. So Food Cycle Science is a Canadian company. We're based out of Ottawa, and we're 100% focused on food waste diversion solutions. We do this using our innovative technology called the Food Cycler. It's an in-home food recycler. I'm not sure if you are overly familiar with it, but I will definitely be explaining the details about it shortly. But essentially, it's an in-home food recycler. It's sold direct to consumers through partners like Vitamix. But then we also put them into classrooms through some partnerships with some not-for-profit organizations such as Eco Schools Canada. And then the reason I'm here is we have a really strong municipal program that implements our technology into municipalities, not just as a product, but as a program that helps divert waste from your landfill. So our municipal program helps many small, rural, remote, and northern communities keep food waste out of their landfills. To date, we're currently working with 99 Canadian municipalities through our partnerships, and this is across 8 provinces and 1 territory, from Nelson in British Columbia to Hay River in the Northwest Territories, and many communities here in Ontario who often face struggles with food waste management, or where green bin programs and curbside collection isn't necessarily the best or only option for them when it comes to food waste. So to briefly touch on the issue, food waste, it's something that is avoidable. It accounts for a large portion of our household waste, and it's mostly made up of liquid, which is heavy and freezes in the wintertime. On top of that, when we put food waste in our landfills, it ends up in an anaerobic environment where it doesn't have that access to oxygen that it needs to break down and release CO2. So when it's lacking that oxygen, it breaks down and releases methane gas, which is quite a bit more harmful than CO2 to the environment. So these factors make it so that food waste is a problem that has a strong municipal impact. So one of the impacts to municipalities is that since food waste makes up a large portion of our waste stream, it is causing our landfills to fill up quickly. Operating a landfill is obviously quite costly for a municipality, and we want to extend the lifespan of our landfills for as long as possible. The environmental impact is that when, as I mentioned, when organic waste is put in the landfill, it produces methane gas. And that's very harmful when you compare it to CO2. 25 times more harmful is a conservative estimate, but we've seen numbers that say it's 50 or more times more harmful than CO2. So we really want to keep our food waste out of the landfill. In our communities, when we put food waste in the garbage, it causes odors, which is obviously unpleasant for humans, but typically attractive for animals like bears and raccoons who like to go through our trash. When we remove the food waste from the garbage, it eliminates these issues and it reduces the overall volume of what's ending up in our waste stream. So this can save on hauling and disposal fees, it can save space in the landfill, and it can definitely save residents on hassle and any excess waste fees that they might face. So we often get asked, haven't we solved this problem already? And yes, there are green bins, which are common in big cities that typically have high population density and the right infrastructure. But this can be cost prohibitive and operationally challenging to implement. And even where it is implemented, it is a very costly program to run. Many people in your community might backyard compost. And while this is a great option, it's definitely not feasible for everybody. It's certainly not a year-round solution. There's still a concern about animals getting into those bins, and people who live in multi-residential spaces don't really have access to backyard composters all the time. And then finally, the easiest solution is to continue to landfill our organic waste, but the long-term impacts here are costly and harmful to the environment. So at Food Cycler, we proposed a different way to deal with our food waste, and this really focuses on making it easy to deal with and right in our homes. So essentially, we built this small kitchen appliance. It's about the size of a bread machine, and you can put in your food waste, which includes meat, poultry, fish, dairy, even some bones, as well as everything else that would go into a traditional backyard composter. Then you push a button, and in a matter of hours, what you have is a dry, odorless, and nutrient-rich soil amendment that comes out. As you can see, the bucket is completely removable from the machine, so the machine can be put anywhere within the house. All you need is a plug. A lot of people put the bucket under their sink or on their countertop, and then when it's full, they take it to their machine in their basement or wherever it is to run the cycle. And on average, you can fit between 1 and 3 kilograms of food waste into the Food Cycler per cycle. Each cycle takes less than 8 hours, so typically an overnight process, and it uses between 1 and 1.5 kilowatt hours of power. So very similar to having your computer plugged in for the same amount of time. Just to give a different visual of the machines here, we have 2 solutions that we offer within our municipal programs for residents. So on the left there, we have the FC30, which has a 2.5 liter capacity, while the Eco5 on the right there has a 5 liter capacity. Both machines are very similar in actual countertop or floor size and the amount of space they take up. But the Eco5 we typically recommend for larger households or residents who just generate a lot more food waste on a daily basis. But ultimately within our programs, we leave it up to residents when they register to choose which unit best suits their household, and then they get that unit. And then I'll just emphasize here that the cycle that takes less than 8 hours, during that process from start to finish, is about a 90% reduction in the weight and the volume of food waste. And then that end product is actually something that people can use on their property, in their garden, on their lawn, and it's beneficial to the soil health and to plant growth. And if people, for whatever reason, don't have a garden, don't have any space to put their byproduct, here are just some other options that it can be used with. You can put it into a backyard composter or a tumbler or a green cone. It can go into leaf and yard waste systems as well. We have had some residents who have pelletized it and used it as a home heating alternative. Not overly common, but it has happened. And then it can go to a compost site, can be donated to a local farm, can be used at a community garden. And if there is a green bin program available, it can be added to the green bin, and it'll just really reduce the weight and the tonnage that's going through there. But that's a bit more of a last option, because most of our residents really enjoy having something that they've generated from their food waste and that they can use right at home. So from an environmental standpoint, the Food Cycler is a net negative carbon solution. And what this means is, just like planting trees or using solar panels, when you use the Food Cycler to avoid bringing food waste to the landfill, you're avoiding more greenhouse gases in the process than you're creating. The same can't necessarily be said for other municipal operations such as waste facilities or waste and recycling collection services, which rely on putting a large fleet of CO2 emitting vehicles on the road. In addition to that environmental impact, the traditional method of managing waste is a heavily burdened system with unrelenting costs, trucking, labor, maintenance. With the food cycler, it's a truly decentralized approach that avoids the unnecessary additional labor costs, doesn't have those additional greenhouse gas emissions from trucking or improper food waste breakdown, and the infrastructural costs to residents and to the municipality, it's quite minimal. So one thing we've learned from working with our municipal partners is that residents are very interested in being part of the solution. They want to try new things, they want options, and they want their government to bring these things to their communities. With the food cycler, you get to bring something that's innovative and tangible to your residents, and they don't need to live in a big city to be able to divert their organics. We believe that food waste diversion should be available to all Canadians, no matter where they live, and there really is no one size fits all. Between green bin programs, backyard composters, and tumblers and things like that, the food cycler fits right in as a complementary option or as an option where those other methods don't necessarily work as well as you would like them to. So now to get to some of the results of our completed pilot programs, I mentioned that we're working with many Canadian municipalities, and to date we've completed pilot programs in over 50 municipalities and over 6,000 households. And of these 6,000 households that have completed the program, we always send out a follow-up survey, and that's part of the requirement from the resident, and we collect data to present back to the municipalities. So what we found is the results have been overwhelmingly positive. We've been able to achieve a significant amount of net new waste diversion. We've had a generous user experience rating of 4.6 out of 5 stars within these programs, and a 98% participation rate, meaning that 98% of residents who participate in these programs and get a food cycler say that they'll continue using the food cycler as their solution to organic waste moving forward. To briefly touch on some federal funding that we have for the program, last summer, Food Cycler was selected as a finalist in Impact Canada's Food Waste Reduction Challenge, which is a 3-part initiative from the Government of Canada through Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to reduce Canada's food waste. So as a finalist, we are given a $400,000 prize and tasked with finding more Canadian municipalities as implementation partners. And we've been using this funding to invest directly into these pilot programs at a heavily subsidized price, which I will get to in a few slides. And these pilots have been helping us move into the final stage of the challenge, which comes with a $1.5 million grand prize. And any future funding that we do receive is just like in the stage 2 there. It's going to be going right back into these programs for Canadians, and any municipalities that partner with us will have the right of first refusal on any subsequent funding. So just to briefly look at what the pilot program looks like in terms of the timeline, it's typically a 12-week project. Residents will purchase the food cycler at a subsidized rate from their municipality. They use the unit, track the number of cycles per week, and at the end, they get to keep their food cycler, and we ask them to complete that survey that I mentioned that allows us to evaluate the program's success. The results are then presented back to you in a final report, and this data can be used to support future waste management decision-making or to accompany a recommendation or a grant application to expand the program. And we offer this final report and grant writing as part of the program. So for the cost structure with the program, the funded pilots work based on the subsidy model, where Food Cycle Science provides that initial discount, and we add in that federal investment from Impact Canada, and this gets the price of each unit reduced by 50% compared to the retail price. We then ask the municipality to subsidize the cost by $100 per household that's participating, and then the participating residents will choose which model best suits their household, and they contribute the remaining amount. And then after that 12-week pilot program, the food cycler is theirs to keep. We just ask that they complete that survey, and then we present the data back to you showing how much waste diversion has happened within that 12 weeks and estimate for the year. And from there, we can really look at waste savings together and look at expanding the program and look at how successful the program has been.
Jacob.
Yep.
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. We are at our 10 minutes. If you
Okay.
want to wrap it up with 30 seconds here.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me know. These are just pilot size recommendations based on our experience. 50 households is the minimum, and that would come with a $5,000 municipal investment plus shipping and HST. But we are very flexible in these pilot sizes and happy to adapt them to suit your budget and your needs and demand from residents. So with all that being said, I just want to welcome you as a partner in the Food Waste Reduction Challenge. We believe your community would be a great fit, and today I'm just asking that you kindly receive this presentation as information, and if there isn't any interest in partnering with us on a funded pilot program, to refer us to a staff member for a report and recommendation. Apologize for going over the time there, but thank you very much for letting me present, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jacob, for that. And yeah, we were a little lenient letting you go a little long here. Jacob, I have one question. If council doesn't, what's the life cycle of these products? How long do they last?
Yeah, so the smaller, thank you for the question. And the smaller unit there, it goes for between 5 and 7 years is the estimated lifespan, and the larger unit, the Eco 5, is 7 to 10 years.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jacob, for the presentation. I appreciate that. I have one question in terms of how easy and how would residents go about replacing anything that breaks?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. And yeah, so basically we have a full customer care and customer support team here in Ottawa that manages our municipal programs. So within these programs, all the material that the resident gets from us in terms of the user manual and the resident guide, it all says if you have any issues with your machine, if you need any troubleshooting or warranty replacements or anything like that, contact our team, and our team takes care of that. So we have a full team that is strictly dedicated to making sure that the residents who have any trouble with the machine, they can either get it replaced or have a new part sent to them or just troubleshoot the issue together.
Okay, thank you.
I have one technical question.
Yes, Councillor Emerson.
Okay, so if you do that overnight, it's just a technical question because I don't understand. And if the stuff is already wet with water, all you really did was dry it out. It didn't compost or go away. And then that will eventually, wherever you put it, still end up. I don't see how you're saving carbon, actually.
Thank you for the question and the comment. So so these machines are not composters, they're compost alternatives in terms of they're food recyclers. They grind, dehydrate, and dry out the food waste. So it basically brings it along that process of the food waste breaking down. It's not a compost at the end. We call it a soil amendment, or our play on words is a foodalizer, as opposed to a fertilizer. So it's basically a nutrient-rich alternative to fertilizer for your garden or for your plants. So again, it's not compost. We never market our machines as kitchen composters. That's typically the third parties that do that. But you are correct that once the byproduct comes out, it is not a compost, but it is sped up along that breakdown process, and it can go into your garden right away and help with plant growth and soil health.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further, then we have a proposed motion that reads that the delegation from Jacob Hanlon regarding food cycle science be received for information. Do I have a Councillor Chilcott will move? Councillor Prose will second. All in favor? And that's carried. Again, thank you very much for the presentation, Jacob.
Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your night.
Thank you. Next, Patricia Hunter regarding the St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership. Good evening.
Hello. Okay, it works. Doesn't have a light on this one. Thank you for having me. My name is Patricia Hunter. I'm the manager for the St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership. I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce myself, reintroduce myself in some cases, and to share some updates and get you up to date with all the projects we have going on and some opportunities we have moving forward. So are my slides being shared?
Will be in one moment.
So just to give some background, our project was established here in the region in 2011. We are we are federally funded, so we receive funding from Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. We are a community capacity building project. So we do not work directly to support and serve immigrants. We have 2 local settlement services offices. One of them is located nearby in Elmer, which is Mennonite Community Services, and the other is YWCA Settlement Services. They are both strong partners in our work, but they do the front-facing work, whereas our work is more in the back end to make everyone else kind of work better together and to create more effective systems. So the vision of the St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership is for St. Thomas and Elgin County communities to have a culturally diverse, welcoming, caring, and inclusive community that will retain current residents, welcome newcomers, and provide them the opportunity to successfully integrate, contribute to, and benefit from social, cultural, and economic inclusion. What we're looking for is to say, how can we create communities that not only serve the people who are currently living here, but also shorten that path that it takes for people to integrate who are coming from outside of the country and in some cases outside of the community. We currently have about 18 members serving on our council. It fluctuates all the time, but we have a cross-sectoral representation. We have people all the way from health to employment. We also have, as I mentioned, these 2 settlement sectors. We have education. It's a really great cross-section that looks at all facets of integration into a community. And we're always looking for new members. So if anyone here is driven to join us, we invite you to the table. We currently work under 5 different priority areas. The first one is workforce development and employer supports. And that looks at the 2 sides of the coin when we're talking about employment. So this looks at, are the immigrants and newcomers who have come into our community, are they ready to work? Do they understand the Canadian system? But then also on the other side, are our current workplaces, are they ready to accept immigrants? Do they understand the small nuanced differences you might need to implement to ensure that people who've never worked in Canada understand the Canadian system? In fact, on August 3rd, we're currently offering a free event about the recruitment and retention of immigrant workers. And this is an event anyone can join, and we would welcome employers from across the county to come participate. So if anyone out there is listening, or any of the councillors here know of a company that might benefit, please direct them to join that event. We also look at community readiness, which is saying, is this current established community, are they ready? Do they understand how to welcome and to interact with immigrants and diverse voices? We're always doing public awareness campaigns and different initiatives. Locally and during COVID, we were the co-chairs. I was the co-chair as Steel Up for the Low German Community of Practice. Out in this region, we have a great representation of the Low German community, and it's really important to us that we make stronger connections and cohesive ties to that community. We also work with equitable supports, which is saying, do the services that exist, do they have the capacity and do they have the tools they need to serve immigrants? We also look at education, saying, are there opportunities for people to learn about life in Canada? Are there English language opportunities and so forth? And finally, we look at civic and social inclusion. So is there a pathway for our newcomers and immigrants to get integrated into the more social and the more active pieces of our communities? So just going over some of our projects that we've recently done that I think would be of great importance and of interest to this group is at the end of COVID, we did a survey that looked at the experiences of discrimination in our community. And what we found, we had about just over 400 people participate in that survey. We had one cohort, which was immigrants and racialized people. We had a different cohort, which was Indigenous, and the last one was white non-immigrants. About 50% of the study were from our immigrants and racialized. And we found that 7 in 10 individuals had experienced discrimination in some form over the 3 years prior to the survey. So after we did presentations across the community about that research, we had many questions about what exactly were they experiencing? How can we address it if we don't understand those nuanced pieces? So we're currently doing the second phase of that research in partnership with Western University, and we're putting a call out to any immigrant or racialized individual who has experienced some form of discrimination. And when we say that, we don't mean egregious acts that are like very necessarily outward and aggressive. We're saying forms of inappropriate jokes or derogatory language, or just instances where you felt like you weren't included because of your race or your immigration status. So we're inviting anyone out there, and we would appreciate the support to try and recruit some participation in that. We also, for the first time ever, did a immigrant survey, and that took place last month, where we had 99 participants. We just fell short of that 100 mark of people who were born outside of Canada to help us understand what services they're accessing, their experiences accessing those services. We also asked what were some barriers to your integration into the community and what were some things that were challenging, with some options for some solutions that were suggested. We're still going through that data, but once the report is finalized, we will be sharing it with the council. We hope to repeat that every 2 years. So in 2 years from now, we'll be knocking in your door to get you to help us promote that research and trying to get it into more households. We definitely have more than 100 immigrants across Elgin County, so trying to get as many voices to the table would be great. We recently completed a resource called the Planning Events That Are Culturally Inclusive, a guidebook. And what we found were, as we're seeing more and more diversity coming into our community, some of the events that we have may that I've been putting on for years may have some elements that could use some updating or some tweaking to make them more inclusive and more welcoming for people who may not be used to the way that we're doing things. So the guidebook that we created is free for anybody to use, and it's not meant to be a checklist. It's meant to make the people who are planning the events think about some aspects that might be approached or might be considered differently from people with different backgrounds. So it's meant to be thought-provoking and to start the conversation as opposed to giving direct solutions. We think that helping people get to the end conclusion themselves will make more decisions down the road, be more inclusive. We've also had the opportunity to update our newcomer information package, which was originally created in 2012. This package was conceived because at the time we found there was a lot of community directories. Directories are incredible resources if you understand what a service does. But if you're new to a country or new to a community and the name of the service doesn't mean anything to you other than random words strung together, it's very difficult for newcomers to navigate those systems and to get the supports that they are entitled to and could really benefit them. So we created this, and it gives a really good background of what the services do and where they're located. So we have updated versions of that. If you know where your binder is, I know every single municipality got one. I'm challenging all our councillors to have a scavenger hunt to try and find one in the building if it still exists. If not, we can still get you one, but we also have an online version, which we would invite you to share on your municipal website as a resource. It's great not only for newcomers, but it's great for anyone in the community. I think that information and knowledge is always the key, and we want people to make informed decisions and to access the resources that they have. I did want to take the opportunity to share some demographics, and I think some people's eyes glaze over with statistics, but I love statistics and I like to try and show people what they're actually telling you. So one of the biggest surprises for me when the census dropped, well, it was a surprise, but also not a surprise. So BAM saw a big decline. And I think it was the year previous where you were one of the biggest landing communities in the country, not only or the small outside of the larger metropolitan areas. So this absolutely has a lot to do with the harsh effects of the low German population and COVID. We did see a lot of the families who were leaving and some of them not returning necessarily right away. We also have a challenge with the census happening in May for this region, where big farming population, and when you have the transient low German families not necessarily returning from Mexico, it sometimes conflates the numbers. Nonetheless, it's something that we should be considering, and I think some of the farmers who are struggling to get work could say that we definitely need some work and some support getting some population. One thing that's really incredible, though, is the median age of this population. You are the youngest community in Elgin County. And absolutely, your Ontario on average is 41.6 years old, where you're 34.4, which means you have a large potential for a workforce, and you also have a lot of youth and children, which means you will continue to see more access to a workforce than some of the other communities. When we're looking at immigration, so the tricky part is, especially in the regions of our communities that do have more low German speaking Mennonites, not all of them come into our community and are measured as immigrants. So sometimes these numbers don't really tell us a true story because some of them have their citizenship and are reclaiming their citizenship. So they're not measured in these numbers. Nonetheless, Overall, you have 1,300 immigrants in your 7,000 population, which is about 6.5% of your population. And unsurprising, the biggest place of origin is Mexico, but you also have some UK and US. And when you're looking at the more recent immigrants, those numbers are considerably lower, where you're seeing in the 5 years leading up to the census, you had about 75 individuals who were considered immigrants. Still, Mexico was a large number, but I was quite surprised to see the Philippines were a good center. So you may have a few families from the Philippines who have come to this community. One of the pieces that is of note is that despite having higher numbers of immigration, you do have a quite low number of visible minorities, which leads to a community perception that there is no immigration here at all. When you have lower numbers of visible minorities, most people conflate immigrants with people who are racialized. But that being said, we have much lower visible minority rates than Canada and Ontario, where we're seeing 34% in Ontario and 26% in Canada. So this means that the community may not actually be ready or may not have very much experience interacting with people from racialized backgrounds. And it's something that we can definitely be proactive about to try and get people more comfortable. When we talk about immigration, there's
Well,
Am I
we have a
cut off?
public meeting coming up really quickly here, so. yeah.
okay. Can I just, one more slide? I can go to the next slide. So the next slide that is actually really interesting for me is the newer numbers that they're bringing with mobility. So not only are we tracking immigration, but this looks at a year before. So the one on the left is saying 1 year before the census, 425 people who called this community home weren't living in this community. When you're looking at 5 years before that, that's 27%. And that's a much higher rate than what we're seeing in the province and in Canada. In Canada, we're seeing 22%, and in the province, 21%. So we do see people are moving into this region, they're finding this region, but for some reason, your population is still going lower. So it's something absolutely to consider. So the last piece is just a resource that you took up 62 pages of your package. So it's just saying that immigration is the biggest driver that Canada is focusing on to increase our workforce, and that our communities need to consider how to attract some of the people who are coming into the country who are quite skilled, quite educated, to help support the workforce and to support some of the work happening. So the package that I provided you is a resource that is free to use, and supports municipalities to understand how they measure against others and also how they can use that information to market themselves. The marketing piece isn't available, but should be available in the next few months.
Thank you, Patricia, for that. It is a big read when you put this all together. So it consumed a fair amount of time and upwards of 150 pages of our agenda. But thank you for that information. And it is kind of eye-opening. And I think used as a guide going forward would be very useful. Does anyone from council have any questions at this point? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for attending this evening and providing that information.
Great, thank you so much.
We have a motion that reads that the delegation from Patricia Hontar regarding the St. Thomas Elgin Local Immigration Partnership be received for information. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move, Councillor Chilcott will second, all in favor. That is carried. Okay. We're going to recess from the regular meeting so we can move into a public meeting. That's a statutory planning meeting. And I will call this meeting to order at 7:33 p.m. I will ask any members for any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Okay. We have two meetings this evening. The first one is to deal with a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, ZBA 0623, Gregory Underhill Farms Limited, 55267 Orchard Line. Purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject lands from tourist commercial C3 and special agricultural A2 to a site-specific tourist commercial C3-1 zone to permit commercial seasonal travel trailer park and campground use consistent to the existing travel park and campground use of the lot addition lands in zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003. The subject lands are a portion of lands known as 55267 Orchard, which are to be merged with lands known as 5 Bridge Street, Port Burwell. The effect of this bylaw will be to facilitate the expansion of the Big Otter Marina from campground as part of the clearing of consent conditions for Elgin Land Division Committee file number E 21-23, granted May the 24th, 2023. And at this point, I will call for any public participation. Anyone wish to speak to this? But one more call out. If anyone wishes to speak to it, this is the time. Okay. I would note that there is no correspondence with this file.
For your worship, there's no public correspondence received.
All right. There is no other business with this file. Move on with the adjournment then. That the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 0623 is now complete at 7:35 PM. I need a mover. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move. Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That is carried. One down. I'll call the next public meeting to order at 7:36 PM. Remind all members of the panel of disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. This public meeting deals with the proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0723 Crevitz at 56858 Tunnel Line. The purpose of this bylaw amendment is to rezone two portions of the subject lands, one portion from agricultural A1 to a rural residential RR zone to permit residential use, and the remainder from A1 to special agricultural A2 as a result of a surplus farm dwelling severance in zoning bylaw Z456 2003. The subject lands are known as 56858 Tunnel Line, north side, east of Tollgate Road. The effect of this bylaw will be to recognize the residential nature of the newly created residential lot and to prohibit new dwellings on the retained farm parcel in accordance to the official plan as part of the clearing of consent conditions for Elgin Land Division Committee file number E 104-22, granted February the 22nd, 2023. At this point, I will call for any public participation. If anyone wishes to speak to the file, please attend the podium. One more call for public participation. Okay, I would also note on this agenda that there is no correspondence received to be confirmed by the clerk.
Through your worship, I will confirm no public correspondence received.
Thank you. And no other business with this file? Which brings us to the adjournment motion, that the zoning bylaw be considered at a future meeting of council, and that pursuant to the Planning Act requirements, the public meeting for zoning application ZBA 0723 now completed at 7:38 PM. Do I have a mover and second? Counselor Emerson will move and Counselor Prose will second. All in favor? That's carried. We will momentarily return to the regularly scheduled meeting. Okay. Okay, we left off at section 7, the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. Included minutes, the special council meeting held June the 15th, 2023, the regular council meeting held June the 15th, 2023, and the special council meeting held July the 6th, 2023. Everyone has had opportunity to peruse those minutes. And I'll ask if there are any errors or omissions. If not, the motion would read that the minutes of the special council meeting held June the 15th, 2023, regular council meeting held June the 15th, 2023, and the special council meeting held July the 6th, 2023, be approved as presented. I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Froze will move. Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. Deputy Mayor, you had two hands up. I
I know.
figured you were voting for Councillor Chilcott. Which brings us down to section 11, physical services. Do you wish to abate that until Steve has a chance to arrive?
Mr. Mayor, I've been texting with Steve. He's tied up in Burwell. He won't be able to attend tonight.
Then let's proceed. So section 11, physical services, emergency services, 11.2 reports to council. We have report PS 1223 by Steve Adams, Manager of Public Works, Drainage Superintendent regarding the Vienna Community Park Multi-Use Court RFP 23-02 award.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try to do my best to cover this report. Unfortunately, Steve has some of the more nuanced information and he is tied up in Port Burwell because of today's storm. So the gist of this report is that council awarded the RFT for the Vienna Park Pavilion at the May 18th meeting. And that came in at a cost of about $73,000, which left approximately $62,000 for the remaining capital works proposed and approved by council for the Vienna Community Park. Ultimately, council or staff issued the RFP. We received two proposals. Proposals were noted in the report. One was from Railtech Enterprises. They bid on both the single and double court option with a concrete pad. No asphalt costing was provided. Second bidder was Dufferin Construction. They bid on the single and double court as well and provided costing for both concrete and asphalt. Council will note that the bids provided by Railtech were substantially less than those provided by Dufferin. Staff did review the RFP submissions and determined that both submissions were compliant with our requirements, so can be considered by council. The chart that is provided in the report outlines the breakdown of costing for the low bid, which was Railtech, to a cost of $111,456, and then plus HST. For the double court option and $83,070 plus HST for the single court option. Recognizing, however, that both of these values have come in over and above what has been allocated for the project, we are looking for some form of council direction for how and if to proceed and with what option. If council does wish to proceed with either of these, we'll have to allocate the overage from a different reserve for the work. The report does outline three options council may consider. The first one is funding through the Vienna Community Improvement Reserve Fund. The intent of this reserve fund, as established by council last year, is generally for long-term core infrastructure. This project would be non-core in nature, so it is generally outside the mandate of this particular reserve fund. However, council may opt to repurpose some of the money already allocated out of the reserve fund for the item PR03, which is the canoe and kayak launch allocated for next year's budget. That could be reallocated in the short term. Second option would be funded through either the Park and Playground Reserve or the Parkland Reserve Fund. Currently, the municipality has $135,000 in the Parks and Playground Reserve and approximately $66,000 in the Parkland Reserve Fund. I would just reiterate to council that some of the funds from the Parks and Playground Reserve may be required for the works here at the SCC, approximately $60,000. However, there is more than enough money combined in these two reserves for an overage funding. Third option is the dissolving of the dredging reserve. There's approximately $64,000 in the dredging reserve. It was established in 2010 and to date has not been used, and $64,000 honestly won't really do much with respect to dredging in the harbor. So staff would not recommend this option at this time, but we are providing it as an option because it is viable. We would consider that this would likely be needed in Q1 of 2025 to address the scheduled repayment of the outstanding principal on the Ojibwa at that time. So would suggest that if council is interested in going forward with one of these options, that the overage be funded either through the Community Improvement Reserve Fund or out of the Parks Reserve Fund. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll leave it with you and council to discuss, and I will attempt to field whatever questions council may have.
Well, thank you for that report, Thomas. I think you covered it off fairly well. We have a couple of decisions to make on this one. Before we get into that decision, is there any questions regarding the report? Any clarification required? Okay, fairly clear. So I would assume then, and I guess just a nod of heads, if you will, that council is still interested in proceeding with a multi-use court. Okay, so the first decision then is single or double. Okay, we're interested in the double pad. All right, so that's how we're going. Then so that takes care of one. Second decision is, how do you want to fund it? Any discussion? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification from staff, if I could. If we were to fund the overage with the Vienna Community Fund and use the PR 03 line item, Vienna canoe and kayak launch, the 60,000 to fund the overage, could we potentially put that onto the budget discussions as a outside of this piece? Like, could we reintroduce that to have a discussion about that during budgets?
Clarification on the question. Are you suggesting during the budget discussions to find, or at least put the 60,000 back into that fund? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
All right,
Or if it would be possible to have that discussion, yes.
it's always possible to have that discussion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that would, the most used resource between Vienna and Portbro is actually the creek and kayaking and canoeing. And it would be a really serious error, I think, to take that off the budget.
Point, just to clarify, I think what the deputy mayor is suggesting is utilizing that fund in the short term and at the budget stage, replace those funds back into that reserve.
I think that is a bad visual, and probably if that's what you plan on doing, you should take it from the Parks and Reserves Fund and find a way to refund that.
All right. All right. Thank you for that. Additional comments? I appreciate the nuance on that, Councilor Emerson. You're right. Keeping in mind that the original vision of the infrastructure reserve fund was to fund long-term capital gain, needs or requirements in the village, thereby reducing that requirement on the levy.
No, I meant Park Reserve.
I know. I know. But I'm saying one is there,
I just really think it would be a mistake not to have that. I think was the most requested thing was the kayaking canoe launch. I mean, just drive through Vienna
Mhm.
and see how many canoes and kayaks, and not just from the one business, individuals.
Right.
Like crazy are using that.
all right. Any other thoughts? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So I am not suggesting that we get rid of it. I'm just suggesting that we in the short term, use those funds, because my understanding was that line item was not in the budget until 2024, next year.
That's, yeah.
Right.
Well. And what Councilor Emerson is suggesting, we pull that out, there's the perception that we're not going to do it. But if there's a caveat there that this would be put back into the budget process to refund that. Or alternatively, you can go to the overall fund and take your 60,000 from that reserve fund. They're one and the same at the moment. You know what I'm saying? It's visual.
Yeah.
Or as you say, use the park fund and find
That's
a way,
my preferred option. because
find a way
it's
to,
a more equal, I think, appropriation of
and then find a way to reseed that back to
reseed
the
that.
budget. Counselor Chokaj?
Thank you. Just thinking about the fund that we have. I can't see the numbers on it right now. The BCIRF fund,
Mhm.
why would we not take the 60,000 out of there and pay for it? Cause that's. And use it from there. You're just, it's almost like a shell game, right? You're just moving the money from one place to the other, but it's still. So I don't understand why we're trying to move it all over the place.
Really? You don't understand?
Well, I do
I
understand
mean,
what you're trying to
when we
say.
approved, through you, Mr. Mayor, when we approved the funding for the Strathville Hall, it was clearly stated that we were not short funds at all and we could go full ahead and not hurt the community now. So now when you talk about a project in Ward 1, you're saying, well, we'll just try to find the money later. So either we're flush or we're not flush.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say. And that's why the optics.
Right, okay, so if we're just going for visuals, then that's what I mean, like, we're just doing visuals, like, we're just making
Okay.
it look different is all.
Okay, that's for you, Mr. Mayor. To counter that, I would say, right? It's all about visuals, because what happens if that money can't be replaced? Then that canoe thing's not gonna happen, but everything's gonna happen. Still,
Well, I think if they say, I mean, the money's there, we're gonna move it. So we're gonna take it out of one place, and then take it out of another place and put it into, that's all I'm saying, it's just a matter of moving
Okay.
around.
if it doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter. Right, we should take it out of the other. fund. That's all I'm saying.
Again, same thing back to you.
Anything else? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. A question for staff. I understand that we have a decision to make. My question is, I know Lauren is not here, but is there a recommendation as to what reserve he would like to see? Like, is,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy mayor, the options provided in the report were provided in discussion with the treasurer. They're all viable options.
okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
Are you looking for a motion then? Mr. Mayor?
well, we will be very shortly. We're looking for continued discussion and our consensus at the end of the day. We already know that we're interested in proceeding with the multi-use card. We've already decided that we're interested in the double pad. Provide maximum capacity and keep our
Considering from the report before the
Yep.
youth of the community.
Mhm. And it's just down to the option of, we know there's an overage and where we're going to fund it from. At the end of the day, we know that there's a bunch of funds available in the community reserve. We're trying to keep them for those larger infrastructure projects. Yes. We know that we could, we've kind of allocated some for the canoe launch in 2024, right? All right. And that's all we're asking is, do we use that now, refund it through the budget process, or do we go to the park fund, grab that one, use it with the option of refunding that through budget process?
Well, canoe park, through you, Mr. Mayor, the canoe launch is parkland.
Wow. Yes and no, but that was identified as coming from the Vienna infrastructure fund. That's all. That was a decision we made, but the proceeds of those sales. Yeah, all right. I'm getting the sense that there's perhaps a willingness to utilize the parkland fund at this point. But that means council needs to be cognizant that we may, through the budget process, need to rebuild that fund, okay? All right. I haven't got nods on, to my left here. Okay. Any further discussion on that? Counselor Chilcott,
I just want to clarify. So we want to take the entire amount of money required to do the court from the
no,
BCRF, and then 60,000 will go from the parkland to do the launch?
no,
Okay,
the 60,000 is what council, the members of council are suggesting stays where it is for the canoe launch for 2024. They're suggesting the overage be funded from the park plan. Let me get back up here. The Parks Reserve.
Okay.
For the court, all right?
Okay.
Pose a motion there, please, Thomas.
Mr. Mayor, the proposed motion would read that report PS 1223, read Vienna Community Park Multi-Use Court RFP 2302 award be received for information. And that council award RFP 2302 to Rail Tech Enterprises for a double court, multi-use court in the Vienna Community Park in the amount of $111,000 or $111,456 plus HST. That any overage between the RFP 2020 or 2302 award cost and the remaining allocation for capital item PR 02 be funded through a combination of the Parks and Playground Reserve and Parkland Reserve Fund.
All right, that's the motion. Mover and seconder. Counselor Emerson will move. Do we have a seconder? Counselor Froze. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. Moving on with section 12, Development Services, Sustainability and Conservation, 12.1 Correspondence, and 12.1.1 to receive for information. Item A, Notice of Decision of Minor Variance Application A 0423 Flet. B, Notice of Decision of Minor Variance Application A 0523 Toms. C, Notice of Decision of Minor Variance Application A 0623 Redsel. D, Notice of Minor Variance Application 0723 Holcomb. E, Notice of Meeting regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0623 Gregory Underhill Farms Limited. And F, Notice of Meeting regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 0723 Kravitz. Does anyone have any questions regarding any of those information items? If not, then the motion would read that items 12.1.1A through F be received for information. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor Weisler, Councillor Emerson. All in favor? That's carried. 12.2 reports to council. We have report DR 0223 by Steve Adams, Manager of Public Works, Drainage Superintendent, regarding the second quarter drainage report. You get to be Steve again.
I get to put my drainage superintendent hat on for this one. So, Mr. Mayor, through you to council, this report is the first standalone drainage report that we're bringing forward now that building and drainage are separated and we have a building shared service in place. So the report is to inform council of drainage activities, second quarter of 2023. There are 2 new drains ongoing at this time. With respect to the Hampton drain, the landowner has completed the berm. So later, upcoming, there will be a preliminary report to council once more regarding the status of this drain. There's also a new drain. This is ongoing. Peters Drain. Engineer review and assessment is ongoing through SPREET. And SPREET is awaiting the landowner design to complete the preliminary design for this new drain. With respect to drain maintenance, there are a number, probably the largest with respect to drain maintenance we've had in a drainage report. I'll just make a few points that, so there were a couple of sinkholes that were repaired on the Neville drain in Q2 and a sinkhole on Pollock Branch A. There was a a catch basin on the Pollock drain that wasn't draining, and that has been handled so far, but further investigation will be needed. There are also a number of drains, 6 identified in the report for brushing and bottom cleanout. So these are being handled through Norfolk as they are drains that straddle the border between Norfolk County and the municipality. With that, Mr. Mayor, I will leave it with you. The report, as always, with a drainage report such as this, is to receive for information.
Thank you for your report, Thomas. Does anyone have any questions, excuse me, for staff? Councilor Pros.
More of a comment maybe. And last summer, they fixed the drains on the hill there in Jackson Line. Did a really good job on it. Just as a bike down there, they work so well, and the loose soil has washed out, and those drains are, there's 3 or 4, they're completely plugged.
Which drain is that one?
There's a sharp hill on Jackson Line east. They fixed it last year. They spent quite a bit of time there. Was that the one
Okay,
right next to
that's
Coil Road?
Down by the coil?
Yeah.
All right, so it's east of the coil.
Yeah.
In that dip.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
They're completely plugged, so they will wash away if we don't get them open.
I'll pass the information on to Steve.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. I'm sorry that Steve's not here, but I'm actually really impressed with this report. I'm surprised at the number of joint drain initiatives that are going on, and I'm just wondering about this maintenance. Is this do you know if it is scheduled on a every 2 or 5 year basis, or is this just done on inspection and then it's noted that there's some maintenance required, or is there a regular program in place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, I'd have to follow up with Steve on that to get the details. Some municipalities do drainage maintenance different than their neighbors, so some do it on a reactive basis. Some have dedicated schedules for regular maintenance that they establish and approve through council. I don't have the information on how Norfolk County handles theirs, but based on the number of drains here, I'd suggest that it's probably a scheduled maintenance that they're doing in this case, but I can confirm that with the drainage superintendent.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other questions? All right, perfect. Motion would read the report DR 0223 regarding the second quarter drainage report be received for information. Do I have a mover and seconder? Deputy Mayor Weisner, Councillor Emerson, all in favor? That's carried. Item B, report DS 44/23 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding consent application E 50-23 Unger 53579 Colton Line. It's all yours, Mark.
Thank you, your worship. And good evening, council. So this report before you is for a consent application to create a new lot within the boundary of the hamlet of Colton. The created lot is considered to be infilling in an existing developed area where they would have private water and private sewer services. So in saying that, there has to be adequate lot area to provide for these private services. So in review of the application, even though the lands are zoned appropriately as hamlet residential, we have included a rezoning condition because the owner will have to obtain site-specific zoning on the retained parcel to recognize that he is in excess of the maximum allowable accessory building floor area for the existing accessory buildings that he has. So we can recognize that through a zoning amendment, just to recognize the increased floor area. Staff and planner, we recommend the support of the consent application for the creation of one building lot in the hamlet of Colton with the recommended conditions. The conditions do not include a drain reassessment in this case, as there is not a municipal drain present in that area. So you have the attachments for review and you have the recommendation before you, and I will leave it with you, your worship, for consideration and any questions.
All right, thank you for your report. Mark. Any questions for staff? All right, seeing none. We have a motion before us that reads that report DS 44/23 regarding the consent application E 50-23 Unger be received. And that council recommend to the Elgin County Land Division Committee that consent application E 50-23 be granted, subject to the following conditions and considerations. One, that the owner provide stormwater management, drainage, and grading plans for the severed lot to the satisfaction of the municipality. Two, that the owner pay fees as required in the municipal bylaw number 2020-053, cash in lieu of parkland. Three, that the owner provides a survey of the subject lands and includes in the drawing package the requirements from the Planning Act, section 5117. Four, that the owner provides a planning report fee payable to the municipality. Five, the owner obtain site-specific zoning bylaw amendment approval to permit existing maximum accessory building floor area in excess of the permitted maximum in the resident retained parcel. Six, that the owner install an individual private well on the severed lot, providing the municipality with the water quantity and water quality reports for bacteria and nitrates content, meeting the provincial standards for residential use as a matter of public health and safety. Seven, that the owner obtain a municipal lot assessment through the municipality for determination of soils for a private septic system on the severed lot. Eight, that the owner provide written confirmation of the county road access approval for the severed lot from the county of Elgin. And nine, that the owner purchase a civic number sign for the severed lot from the municipality. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Emerson will move, Councillor Froze will second. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on with item C, which would be report DS 45/23 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding consent application E 45-23 Algar Farms Limited, concession 3 lots 1, 2, and 3. Mark?
Thank you, your worship. And this report before council is dealing with two consent applications to create two building lots, again, all within the hamlet of Colton. They would be fronting on Richmond Road this time. The created lots are considered to be infilling in an existing developed area where private water and sewer services are necessary, and therefore adequate lot area is needed to provide the private services. Conditions do include a drain reassessment as the lands are within a municipal drain watershed, being the County Road 43 drain. And a deposit is recommended to be collected to cover the cost of the reassessment report. So that condition is included. Staff and planner, we recommend the support of the consent applications for the creation of the two lots with the recommended conditions. So the attachments have been included for your review as well as the recommendation, and it's before you, your worship, for consideration and any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to confirm, this location is outside of in the condition, it's for a private well. So it's outside of the scope of municipal water. Is that correct?
Correct. Through your worship, Colton is not served by municipal services. So it's all private servicing.
Okay, any additional questions? Then I'll read the motion. That report DS 45/23 regarding the consent applications E 56/23 and E 57/23 Algar Farms Limited be received. And council recommend to the Elgin County Land Division Committee that consent applications E 56/23 and E 57/23 be granted, subject to the following conditions and considerations. One, that the owner provide stormwater management, drainage, and grading plans for the severed lot to the satisfaction of the municipality. Two, the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of a revised assessment schedule for the Chapel Street drain in accordance with the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, as amended, with a deposit to be paid in full to the municipality prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. If the deposit does not cover the cost of the revised assessment schedule, the applicant will be billed for any additional costs incurred. 3, that the owner pay fees as required in the municipality of bylaw number 2020-053, cash in lieu of parkland. 4, that the owner provides a survey of the subject lands and includes in the drawing package the requirements from the Planning Act, section 5117. That the owner, number 5, that the owner provides a planning report fee payable to the municipality. Number 6, that the owner install an individual private well on the severed lot, providing the municipality with water quantity and quality reports for bacteria and nitrates content meeting the provincial standards for residential use as a matter of public health and safety. Should that be severed lots?
Yes.
Should that be plural?
That's true.
Number 7, that the owner obtain a municipal lot assessment through the municipality for determination of soils for a private septic system on the severed lots. That the owner provide written confirmation of county road access approval for the severed lots from the county of Elgin. And number 9, that the owner purchase how about civic number signs for the severed lots from the municipality. Have I got that one wrong?
Just for clarification, the Land Division Committee will consider each application on their own.
Okay,
So really the recommendation is like singularity to each lot, but it's
Times
fine.
two.
It's fine.
All right.
But I do need to correct my typo in condition number 2. It shouldn't be Chapel Street drain. It's County Road 43 drain. It doesn't pay to copy and paste sometimes
uh-huh.
without checking.
Thank you
So
for
the
catching
County
that.
Road 43 drain. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With the motion before you. Do I have mover and seconder? Counselor Prose will move, Counselor Chilcott will second, all in favor? That's carried. Brings us to item D, report DS 4623 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk regarding draft PPS 2023 review.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report before you is a result of direction given to Arcadis to prepare a memo in regards to the draft PPS 2023 that is under public review right now. So while we're in this public consultation period, we just wanted this information to come to council to let you know what the PPS 2023 looks like. It's included in the report as a draft document, but also for Arcadis to point out any implications for BAM. So in the memo that's been attached to the report, there are some points that have been brought out that we will be affected by the changes in the PPS. So it's opportunity to review the draft document as well as consider what policy changes we may have to make to our own land use planning documents. And so in the recommendation, it's for receiving for information. It's also for considering policy changes that we would include as part of our 5-year review that's coming up later this year into 2024. And as well, we're asking if council would like staff to prepare formal comments to send to the province by the deadline. So really it's information. It's notification that we are going to be making some changes to our documents. And it's for your consideration and questions.
Thank you for that, Mark. Of course, the review is based on the April document.
It's based on the one that is attached to
Yes.
your
Yes.
report. And the province, I will add, the province is, while they backed down on the original thought surrounding severances of 3 lots from agricultural parcels, they have backed down because of enormous amount of feedback that they received. So that
I
is-
would suggest that the
Sorry.
jury's still out on that one.
It could be, it could very well be. They have
Yes.
backed down to a point of where, okay, we might talk more about it, but
That's
they
correct.
haven't crossed it off the list.
That's what I'm getting at. I think you may want to maintain some vigilance on that one. They haven't, they've suggested that, oh, that wasn't our intent. However, I'm not convinced that it's off the table at this point. So it's, several organizations have already made some comments out there. The county has, I know that the, Western Ontario Wardens have, SCORE have, various organizations have. Federation of Agriculture's made comments. And it might be prudent for this, body to, add its voice to the choir, so to speak. We've only got a limited time frame here. So what's council's thoughts? Want him to authorize and put a comment period for, or comments forward? What would the comment? Well, first of all, are you in favor of allowing potentially, although it's not clear, 3 dwelling units per agricultural parcel, which potentially could have been severed? That's the fear. That's gone. Not necessarily, that's what I'm saying. Don't turn your back on it.
Just in a review state.
Yes.
Public consultation.
Right. The second one that might be of concern for us is the opportunity to not require justification reports or studies for boundary expansions. That could be a big concern for us. The developer could come in and set up shop just outside your borders and you can't stop it. It's something to consider. Employment lands was another issue that I know the Western Wardens had identified as something for consideration. So those were 3 issues. So what's council's thoughts?
I was right, then I thought that we could expand the village settlements. A private person, a private company can demand an expansion. Is that what how that reads, or is that
It could.
we can demand an expansion of a settlement area?
Currently, there's what is the correct terminology, Thomas or Marg, the comprehensive studies that are required in order to support any expansion of village boundaries or hamlet residential boundaries. But under the PPS proposed, that may not be true.
Yeah, through your worship, normally when you're talking about increasing settlement areas, you're talking about doing a comprehensive growth study.
Right. But that's not required under this version of the PPS, the planning state.
But it isn't really clear who is initiating the expansion, like that. Does that really read like that? Like,
Well, what it's suggesting though is that without having those reports in place, how do you control where growth is going to happen? Anyone can come in and do whatever they want to an extent. But it's also interesting too, because on the agricultural side, they're talking about restricting development on to class 4, 5, and 6 land. If it's specialty crop land, well, you can't do those 3 lots. I'm just saying, I think.
I don't know, it's like not fair for me to comment because I'm right next to a settlement area, so like. You know, if I want to be rich, then I'll just, well, what the heck? Right
You're already
now.
in.
Pardon me?
Part of your farm's already in the settlement area.
Part of it,
Yeah.
then all of it would be.
Could be potentially.
I don't know. I don't think it's fair for me to comment on that. It's leave for other people. It's
I know.
kind of almost a conflict, really.
I didn't hear any declaration. Tongue in cheek, Deputy Mayor, do you have a comment?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I would be in favor of staff providing comment on behalf of the municipality. I think it's important. Any opportunity we get to provide feedback, especially our location, rural and mostly agricultural, we should put our voice on the table, 100%.
For you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that because that is kind of nebulous. Like I don't.
Councilor Froze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Deputy Mayor, in favor of or against? I guess I just need a clarification.
Well, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Rose. I am not in favor of excess growth on prime agricultural land. So I would say that, and I would feel that staff would probably be in that same position. But I would be very interested in hearing staff comment or reviewing comments, obviously, before we send them in.
There is no other meeting. This is.
Okay,
it.
this is, oh yeah, 8
This
August.
is it. Counselor Chokai.
Thank you. I also think that we should send something in. I'm not in favor with allowing the borders just to be moved willy-nilly. I think there has to be some kind of a plan to it, and that we should have some kind of structure for it.
All I would say is without some guidance from perhaps the senior level of government, you're gonna end up with a hodgepodge across the province. In terms of development, in terms of, and it's. Yeah, it's wild, wild west out there.
Can our comment through, to you, Mr. Mayor, can our comment be, this is way too nebulous? Can we have clarification? So.
That could be part of the comments. That could be identified as, not enough detail to make a,
Like really, I can interpret this.
Yeah.
Yeah, both ways, right?
Mhm.
So.
Yeah. I think just briefly to the deputy mayor's comments through you, Mr. Mayor, that staff in accordance with the provincial policy statement that governs good planning in Ontario and our planning documents, that we would generally favor orderly development that focuses on settlement areas and residential development that focuses on the proper designation and zone. So excess development of like a residential or non-agricultural nature based on what has been identified preliminarily in the new PPS would be something that we wouldn't necessarily support. Fair to say, Mark?
That would be exactly fair to say. And that can be our comments. And then we can get into specifics, with the planner's assistance too, and point out the specific items that we've kind of talked about.
Okay, is council comfortable with that? Okay, is the resolution still valid?
Yes.
All right. If there isn't any further discussion, then the motion would read that staff report DS 4623 regarding the draft PPS 2023 review be received for information. And that once the policy changes come into effect, amendments be made to certain official plan policies to be consistent to the new document as part of the municipality of Bayham official 5-year or official plan 5-year 2023-2024 review. And that staff prepare and submit formal comments to the province by August 4th, 2023. Anyone want to move that?
1 second, Mr. Mayor, has a question. Is that the only thing we're commenting on is these points? Like, or are we commenting on other planning things with this resolution?
Those changes.
Just those proposed changes. All right, that's cool. All right.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I've got a mover. Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. Council Choka. All in favor? That's carried. Computer just went dead, so. Let's move on with section 13, finance and administration, 13.1 correspondence, 13.11 to receive for information. Several items. Item A, Township of South Glengarry regarding reducing municipal insurance costs. Item B, Town of Halton Hills regarding reducing municipal insurance costs. C, County of Elgin regarding home-based childcare operator regulations. Item D, City of Quinte West regarding legislative amendments to improve municipal codes of conduct and enforcement. Item E, City of Port Colborne regarding the right to repair movement. Item F, Town of Matachawans, thank you, regarding tax sale proceeds. Item G, Township of Georgian Bluffs regarding Bill 23. H, Town of Essex regarding Code Red and Code Black frequency. I, Alexandra Hospital Ingersoll and Philsburg District Memorial Hospital regarding the 2022-2023 annual report. J, Long Point Region Conservation Authority, June 7th, 2023 meeting minutes. K, Elgin County regarding the June 27th, 2023 County Council highlights. L, Elgin County, the July 11th, 2023 County Council highlights. M. Elgin County regarding the Village of Vienna speed limit amendment. Does anyone have any questions about any of these items of correspondence and or wish to raise attention to any of them? Counselor Froze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item F, I think we already did it one time, but if, just in case we didn't, I would like to support that.
I think we have in the past, yeah. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of clarification. Is it worthwhile to support it again? Or is like our voice goes on record and this seems to come up every so often and then it goes away and then it comes up again. So
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, some of these resolutions, they kind of circle through the municipal realm and they come and go as they, kind of ebb and flow. It's really up to council. I mean, our voice is already on the record as having supported a previous item on tax sale proceeds, but if council wishes to do so for this item, then we can certainly have that as part of the motion.
I have a comment. I'm happy to see the Vienna speed limit study done and that maybe we can put some of this issue about speeding to rest. Doesn't look like as big a problem, and it's great that they're moving the slow down thing a little farther north to try to slow people down before they go down the hill.
Counselor Emerson, if you haven't been paying attention, it's already moved.
I know, but I'm just saying it's up here. It's nice to see that it's on the record. I
Okay,
know.
well, I was thinking that if you haven't noticed, then you've been speeding down through there.
No, no. Well, I may have,
Okay.
but
Deputy Mayor Weisler.
yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. D. So as council will recall, I did a presentation a while back in regards to Bill 5, which we know did not go through. This is sort of a bit of a high level recommendation and request in regards to municipal codes of conduct and enforcement, and I would propose that we support that.
All right, any other comments regarding that? I'd understood that the province was going to be coming out with its own version of Bill 5. Is this it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have not seen that to date, so I'm wondering if that's. I know through my position on AMO that AMO has provided comment to the province in regards to Bill 5 and the fact that it did not get passed, but I have yet to see anything come back.
Okay, I just wanted to read through this resolution.
If I may through you, Mr. Mayor, while you're doing that. One of the big things for me is the updating municipal code of conduct to account for workplace safety and harassment. So that really, I would really like to see that. I do honestly feel that council should be held at the same standard that we're expecting our municipal staff to be held at. And so that is one thing that I would really love to see the province adopt.
All right, well, reading this through, I honestly don't see a lot of difference between this and the proposed Bill 5. It's still, it's not empowering the integrity commissioner to do this, but it's permitting municipalities to apply to the judiciary upon
Correct.
recommendation, which is very similar.
similar.
It's very similar.
Mhm.
So in that respect, I don't have any concerns with that. I don't know if any other member of council does. We did support the Bill 5 in the past, but it didn't clear the legislature. So,
And if I may, just through you, Mr. Mayor, once again, I really think this report or this letter is more of a call to action for the province to revisit that bill and maybe present it in a different manner. I know the original Bill 5, there was a few words and a few things in there that caught the attention And I think if they remove that, we should be good. It should, something similar would go through.
All right. Anything else, that anyone wants to talk about? Oh, no, you've had your say. Deputy Mayor?
So just through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. On K, Elgin County highlights for June 27th. I see that there was another presentation brought forward by the Hospice of Elgin.
Yes.
And I apologize, I have yet to tag in and just take a quick look at that presentation, but I know I've had an opportunity to have an update on a personal level with this organization, and I just have to do a huge shout out to them for the amount of fundraising that they have done. It is absolutely amazing. And I'm very excited to see this come through. I think it would be a huge benefit to our long-term care facilities to have a partnership with hospice in Elgin County. So I just was really excited to see that they were back to county, and just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other item? Okay, so far what I understand is that council's willing and looking to support, or excuse me, receive these for information and support item D. Is that what I'm looking at?
Put that motion forward.
Of course, you'll wordsmith it a lot better than. Go for it.
Motion would be that items 13.1.1 through M be received for information, and that council for the corporation of the municipality of Bayham supports item D, City of Quinte West, regarding legislative amendments to improve municipal codes of conduct and enforcement.
All right, hearing the motion, do I have a seconder? Counselor Chilcott, all in favor? That's carried. Brings us to section 13.2. Item A, CAO 4123 by Thomas Thayer, CAO regarding agreement, Rogers Communication Tower, Starville Hall, 55764 3rd Street. It just seems like there's something missing after CAO.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council.
There is.
This report is a follow-up to the May 18, 2023 report that I presented, and council at that time resolved that it would be supportive of entertaining a Rogers Tower at the Stratfordville Fire Hall, subject to the provision of various documentation, including a siting justification report and site plan, completion of federal statutory public notice and comment, and presentation of a satisfactory lease agreement to be reviewed and authorized by council. So this report brings forward that lease agreement. We have had much discussion with Rogers, along with various legal reviews to ensure our own due diligence. The draft agreement is attached to this report. Rent payable is $1,200 a month, $14,400 a year. That's fairly standard for these types of towers. The term is a 5-year period with a pre-approval for 3 additional terms unless we provide otherwise. And the reason why we do these pre-approvals is because of the high cost of installing the infrastructure at the front end. They want to make sure that the term is sufficient, and they don't want to be moving these towers around on a 5-year basis because they generally site the towers with a particular strategy for maximizing their network. So in providing the northwest corner of the Stratford Fire Hall property, the intent is to work with Rogers to expand their network, but while still permitting regular and unencumbered operation of the fire hall for emergency purposes. And if council is amenable to resolving that this site agreement is acceptable and to authorize its execution by bylaw, we'll advise Rogers, but the bylaw will not come forward until after the justification report and site plan have been vetted by staff and approved, as well as the statutory public comments and notice period. And they have to provide proof of that completion to us to our satisfaction. So, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation before you and council is to receive for information and that council would resolve into entering into the agreement after the other noted documentation has been provided to our satisfaction. I will leave that with you and council.
Thank you for that report. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Counselor Froze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I hope it's not too late to ask this question. With all the new development that's going on around Stratfordville and in Bayham, is there room to expand the fire hall should it ever be needed?
That hasn't been something that has been identified in our 10-year capital program to date. In discussion with the fire chief, he doesn't have concern at this point in time. We do have some room between the proposed site and the existing hall for an expansion. So there is a little bit of room there in case we have to go that route. But it isn't something that we've contemplated in the near term.
Okay, additional questions? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Has it been identified if there's any specific maintenance that is going to be required on an ongoing basis to the site where it will be?
Generally speaking, with these towers, they do have regular maintenance to ensure it's operating optimally. We haven't engaged them in, deep technical detail as to what this maintenance requires, but it's similar to what municipalities do on a regular basis with, various facilities and works and that sort of thing. But yes, we have to provide them with access to the site pretty well 24/7. But it is noted in the agreement that this will not in any way, shape, or form affect how the property and building operate from a fire or emergency perspective.
And one supplementary?
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point of just out of curiosity, the funds that we receive for, I guess, for lack of a better word, for rent to have it there, where do those funds go?
I can follow up with the treasurer specifically. They would come in under our current operating budget as sundry revenue.
Sundry, oh,
And we would recommend an allocation based upon how it comes in to whatever reserve or expense line is deemed appropriate.
thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, the agreement has identified the footprint. How tall is this tower gonna be?
Believe it is. It's 20 or 30 meters tall, but we haven't gotten into discussion about how tall it actually is. They have to determine that based upon their spec.
Right.
And they propose it as part of their site plan. And then the notice distance is 3 times the height of the tower. So they still have to determine how tall it actually will be, but the pad itself will not change depending on the height.
Okay, thank you. Not wondering, or just kind of curious, what the height would be and whether, the beacon might cause some, irritants or irritations in an urban area.
Then through you, Mr. Mayor, just to comment on that, the federal comment period has to be advertised in at least one local newspaper.
Right.
As deemed appropriate, and it will give opportunity for residents to comment on the location and their concern. And then if enough comments are received noting concern, that they have to address those to the satisfaction of the municipality before they can proceed.
All right, thank you for that. Anything for staff, anything additional? All right, we have a motion that reads the report CAO 4123 regarding agreement Rogers Communication Tower, Stratfordville Fire Hall 55764 3rd Street, Stratfordville be received for information. And that the council of the corporation of the municipality of Bayham resolves to enter into a telecommunications site agreement with Rogers Communications, Inc. after such time as a complete siting justification report and site plan have been provided, and the federal statutory public notice and comment period have been completed, both to the satisfaction of the municipality. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Emerson will move, Councillor Pros will second, all in favor? That's carried. Which brings us to item B, CAO 4223 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding agreement RSM Building Consultants, Inc., Building Support Services. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. So this agreement is similar to what has previously been approved for cloud permit. RSM as providing support to Malahide and Bayham for shared service requires that each municipality enter into a standalone agreement for their services. In discussion with RSM and Malahide, they are interested in having this on file as soon as possible to ensure consistent service. The consulting services agreement that's attached is exactly the same as what Malahide currently has in place, so there is no discrepancy between us and them. Similar to what council approved with respect to cloud permit, the recommendation is to receive for information and delegate authority to the CAO to execute the agreement. We would be able to do that as early as tomorrow. There was a question that did arise from one member of council pertaining to some wording in the agreement regarding chargeable amounts. The language in section 6.1 and 6.2 speaks to direct billing to the municipality. We have confirmed with both RSM and Malahide that in accordance with our shared service and recognizing that Scott Sutherland is our CBO, that billing for any Bayham invoices will flow through Malahide. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I will leave it with you and council for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff. Just a question in regards to who in Cloud Permit is an online platform, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just curious as to who in-house will be trained on that process.
Respectfully, that is a little bit outside the scope of this report. However, we are having training ongoing. And those individuals that will have access will be myself, Megan, and Leanne.
Anything additional? Councilor Froze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These rates, do we know if they're comparable to what we have been paying? Or, to that, is this something we're gonna keep a close eye on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, yes, we will be keeping a close eye on it. These rates, they are higher than what we have been paying. However, RSM is a bigger company with more overhead, and there are very few code agencies that provide the service. So it's in some ways they dictate pricing. However, what I will note is that Malahide Council has approved the recruitment of a building inspector deputy CBO. Which will eventually decrease our reliance on consultants and code agencies and will save us money. We've run the numbers on it. It was identified in a previous staff report that the best option is to have 2 staff on hand to support this service. So we are working in that stead, and the recruitment for that position has already opened.
Councilor Froze.
Just a clarification on that, those comments, Thomas. So there will be 2 building inspectors and we will be sharing 2 building inspectors with Malahide.
We will have a CBO and we will have a building inspector who will also be deputy CBO for backup purposes, and we will be sharing them both with Malahide, yes.
Anything additional? Yep, Councilor Froze.
Thank you. Just one more comment. So as we're keeping track of costs, how much are we willing, as already was alluded, it will be costing us more right off the bat. How long are we gonna let it go till we stop doing the shared services? If like, how much more does it have to cost us before we stop? Okay.
I think the assumption is that you're going to be using RSM right off the bat. I think RSM is like a backup stopgap should the need arise that you need. That's what they're being there for. The deputy CBO or the inspector would be less money. That's my understanding.
That's correct, yes. The reason that RSM is in place, or the reason that we had contemplated originally with Malahide about extending Paul Hillenar's contract, is to have capacity there in case the CBO is over capacity. They are strictly for backup purposes. Currently, we don't have a second staff member, so they provide inspection support, but they don't do plan review. Plans review is CBO responsibility.
Counselor Chilcott.
Thank you. So we use the company only if we need them.
Yes.
When we hire a deputy, he'll be full-time.
If we hire when we hire a deputy, because the recruitment has already opened, it will decrease our reliance on RSM to provide support, which will lower our cost burden that goes towards consultants. We will have more cost controllable internally because we have 2 staff members that are within a municipal organizational structure. And we have run the numbers on this with Malahide. This is the most optimal way to move forward to save costs and or get additional service hours per year.
Okay, thank you.
Is there?
Counselor Emerson.
Is there, for a building officer, is there, what's the maximum hours and is he gonna, like, for building? Like, so that's kind of like an open door to say, well, I don't really have to maybe work so hard or do anything extra because that guy's there for backup. So then maybe we don't save as much money as we think we're saving. I'm not saying that'll happen, but it's still like kind of open door that I think, I don't know. Like,
I would say that consider it the same as bylaw enforcement. All right, we have a third-party contractor on standby should the need arise. And yet we have a bylaw enforcement officer as well. This is a similar arrangement. Would it be fair?
That's fair.
Yeah, but at what point do we not need the standby, I guess, right? We just hire 1 each and then don't have any standbys. I don't really see when you run the numbers, but what numbers are those? Like, how often are you gonna need these guys when we already have a guy we're sharing with Mela?
Hopefully you don't. But if you don't have this in place, then who do you go to?
Just take an extra week to prove something, that's all.
Wow. Okay, Counselor Froze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get, part of my ignorance in this, just help me to understand. So we went from a 3-day a week with Paul and it seemed to be sufficient. He was quite timely anyway, as far as my experience went with him. So now we're gonna go to a shared services with 2 full-time staff.
Yes, that's correct. So we have access to 2 staff 5 days a week rather than 1 staff 3 days a week.
Don't complicate it, Deputy
No.
Mayor. Okay,
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just I won't complicate it. Just wanting to clarify though. I'm based on the numbers in the presentation, my understanding is that we will have access to services 5 days a week, but it's going to be, we're going to be paying around the same amount as we did for the 3 days a week.
For comparison, when we had Mr. Hillenar on providing service, we had him 3 days a week. And his, well, I won't speak to his compensation, but what I will say is that we get access 5 days a week to Mr. Sutherland through Malahide for less than we paid Mr. Hillenar 3 days a week.
Thank you.
okay. I think the confusion is that when you bring on a deputy, there's another cost there, and I think that's what they're trying to get at, Thomas, is there a savings when you've got 2 staff, even though we'll be having a full-time?
This was what we had contemplated prior to commencing this appointment. We had looked at what a CBO and a code agency would cost versus what 2 staff would cost. And it was identified in a staff report, I believe it was June 15th, that with 2 staff on board, we receive 100 service hours extra a year and incur costs 10 to 20% less than what we would otherwise be paying. So that's been previously identified to council. This report is here to provide for those instances where we are over capacity and have to have building support because we are legislated to have building support. We have timelines to adhere to under the building code. So it is expected that once we have 2 staff on board to support this service, the reliance on RSM will decrease. However, we have to have this agreement in place for overflow and in the interim until we're able to onboard successfully a building inspector.
Okay, you had a question, Councilor Chilcott.
It's changed now.
Okay,
Basically, the company that we're hiring, we only pay them if we use them. It's not a matter of we pay them ongoing, so it would only be anything above and beyond what we could handle at that time, correct?
They are pay-per-use, yes.
I haven't real. So Councilor Froze claims that we had a guy doing it for 3 days. Now we got 2 guys, but we still need overflow. Like, I get it in the transition, but at some point, why do we even need this? Like,
And that's a fair comment. However, we have to have this in place because we don't have that second staff member at this time. Once we have the second staff member and we can evaluate exactly what both parties' workloads are and whether we need overflow, then we'll reconsider the arrangement.
now it's clear, right? But before it was like this was gonna
Okay.
be ongoing.
no,
It's just a routine.
base. Don't use the word retainer, but no, you're right. It's,
Cost.
we're not incurring
But we
costs
have to
unless we
have
have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay, it's Malahide's backup and for us to be with them, this is what we need to do.
Okay,
Okay,
here's one.
yeah, I know, I know.
No, it actually is clear.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions or concerns? And again, just to say to Councilor Prost, you're absolutely right. We keep an eye on this thing and if it's going sideways. Right,
How far sideways does it have to go?
good point.
That's council's decision.
Dan.
Let's give it a run and see what happens, okay? All right. The motion would be that report CAO 4223 regarding agreement RSM Building Consultants, Inc. Building Support Services be received for information. And that council delegate authority to the Chief Administrative Officer, CAO, to execute a consulting services agreement with RSM Building Consultants, Inc. RSM on behalf of the municipality for building support services in support of an established building shared service with the Township of Malahide. Do I have a mover and a second? Deputy Mayor Weiser will move, Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Which brings us to the bylaws. First one is bylaw 2023-058. A bylaw to authorize the execution of a land use agreement between the Corporation Municipality of Bayham and the Stratford Community Committee. Does anyone have any concerns with that bylaw? Okay. All right, the motion would be that bylaw number 2023-058 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder. Councilor Pros will move. Thought I saw Deputy Mayor Weiser. All in favor? Let's carry. Brings us to the confirming bylaw. That confirming bylaw number 2023-059 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Weiser, Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. Which brings us to the adjournment motion. Does anyone have anything else they want to discuss before we adjourn? I move the motion. The council meeting be adjourned at 8:53 PM. Moved by Councillor Pro, seconded by Deputy Mayor Weiser. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you for joining us this evening. Take care. We'll see you in August.
Drink.